A billionaire sat alone in an empty five-star restaurant, rain hammering the windows. One unlit candle on a cupcake. No guests, no calls, no one. Jonathan Pierce had everything money could buy, except anyone who cared if he existed. Then the door burst open. A soaked maid rushed in, dragging cleaning supplies and a wide-eyed little girl behind her. Before the mother could apologize, the child stared at the cupcake and whispered, "Mommy, nobody should be alone on their birthday." What happened next shattered 3 years of silence. The girl began singing, off-key, fearless, full of joy Jonathan had forgotten existed. For the first time since the accident that destroyed his life, he felt something crack inside his chest. He didn't know it yet, but this 8-year-old stranger and her struggling mother would demolish everything he thought he understood about wealth, purpose, and what it means to truly live. You've just found Life in Stories, real tales of transformation that'll make you feel everything. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let this story work its magic. Don't forget to subscribe so these moments keep finding you. Drop a comment below. What city or country are you joining us from? The rain didn't just fall, it attacked. Each drop slammed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grandview Hotel's private dining hall, like accusations Jonathan Pierce had grown numb to hearing. The room was built for power dinners, diplomatic celebrations, wedding receptions that cost more than most people earned in a year. Tonight, it held one man at a table set for 6. Jonathan sat with military posture in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost $8,000. His watch, a limited edition Patek Philippe, ticked quietly on his wrist, counting down seconds he had stopped valuing. Before him sat a single cupcake, vanilla frosting swirled into a perfect peak, one slender candle standing unlit at its center. No servers hovered nearby. No assistant confirmed tomorrow's schedule. No board members offered hollow well wishes. The silence was so complete he could hear the ventilation system cycling through its programmed routine. 34 years old today. He told himself the same things he'd repeated for 3 years. Billionaires don't need birthday parties. Mature men don't require validation. He had conference calls scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tokyo, London, Sao Paulo. The world didn't stop spinning because Jonathan Pierce aged another year. But the lie tasted bitter. His phone sat face down on the white tablecloth. 0 notifications. His father hadn't called. His former fiancée certainly wouldn't. The colleagues who praised him in boardrooms had never once asked how he actually felt. Jonathan reached toward the cupcake, then withdrew his hand. What was the point? The door exploded inward. A young woman in a hotel uniform stumbled through, arms loaded with cleaning supplies, hair plastered to her face from rain. Behind her, a little girl in a purple raincoat hopped through puddles forming on the marble floor. "Anna, careful." The woman froze mid-sentence, eyes widening as she registered who sat in the empty room. "Mr. Pierce, I'm so sorry. The manager said to prep the hall before tomorrow's event. I didn't know—" "It's fine." Jonathan's voice came out rougher than intended. "Continue." The woman, Maria, he remembered from passing her in hallways he barely noticed, bowed her head apologetically and began setting down supplies. But the little girl wasn't moving. She stood 3 feet from Jonathan's table, staring at the cupcake with an expression of profound confusion. "Mommy," she said, voice clear and certain. "Someone's having a birthday." Jonathan blinked. "How did you know?" "The candle." Anna pointed with one small finger. "But birthdays aren't supposed to look sad." Maria's face flushed crimson. "Anna, please, Mr. Pierce doesn't need—" "Wait." The word escaped before Jonathan understood why he said it. "She's all right." Anna stepped closer, tilting her head like she was solving a puzzle. "Did everyone forget?" The question landed like a physical blow. Jonathan found himself answering with uncharacteristic honesty. "Yes." The girl's eyes went wide with the kind of injustice only children recognize instantly. She spun toward her mother. "Mommy, nobody should be alone on their birthday." Before Maria could intervene, Anna began singing, off-key, unself-conscious, absolutely earnest. "Happy birthday to you." Maria closed her eyes in mortification. Jonathan sat frozen, something cracking inside the carefully maintained walls he'd built around himself. When was the last time anyone sang to him? His engagement party? Before the accident? Before everything shattered? Anna finished with a flourish, beaming like she'd just solved world hunger. "Now make a wish!" Jonathan stared at the unlit candle. He didn't believe in wishes anymore, not after learning that wealth couldn't prevent tragedy, success couldn't buy loyalty, and power meant nothing when you woke alone in hospital rooms. But his hand moved anyway, finding the small lighter near the napkin dispenser. The flame caught. The candle glowed. "I wish I wasn't alone." He blew it out. Anna squealed with delight. "Would you both like to share it?" The words came from somewhere unfamiliar inside him. Maria shook her head quickly. "Sir, we couldn't possibly—" "Yes?" Anna bounced on her toes. "We'd love to." For the next 15 minutes, Jonathan Pierce, who'd negotiated with presidents and dined with royalty, shared a simple cupcake with a hotel maid and her daughter, and he learned things that shamed him for never asking before. Maria wasn't uneducated. She'd been a teacher in Guatemala, lost her husband to violence, immigrated with nothing but her daughter and determination. She worked 2 jobs while studying for U.S. teaching certification exams she couldn't afford to take. She wasn't cleaning floors because she lacked ambition. She was fighting for survival with more courage than he'd shown in 3 years of self-pity. When they finally stood to leave, Anna wrapped small arms around him in an unself-conscious hug. "Happy birthday, Mr. Jonathan. I hope someone sings for you every year." Maria offered a timid smile, the kind from someone unaccustomed to being seen as fully human. "Thank you for your kindness." Jonathan watched them disappear through the door, Maria's cleaning cart squeaking down the hallway. The restaurant fell silent again, but this time, the quiet didn't feel like a tomb. 3 years earlier, Jonathan Pierce had been unstoppable. Founder of Pierce Industries at 26, creator of a logistics platform that revolutionized global freight management, the golden son of steel magnate Warren Pierce, who accepted nothing less than dominance. Jonathan delivered it. Top MBA, record-breaking profits, magazine covers, a company valued at $4 billion before he turned 30. He was engaged to Victoria Ashford, daughter of a telecommunications empire. He was celebrated, envied, admired, until the night his car hit black ice returning from a board celebration. His driver died instantly. Jonathan survived? Barely. Months in hospitals, surgeries, physical therapy that felt like torture, the limp that still remained on cold mornings. Victoria ended things with a text 2 months later. "I can't do hospitals and uncertainty, I'm sorry." His father's response was worse. "The company needs you functional. Self-pity doesn't drive stock prices." So Jonathan returned to the boardroom still hurting, still grieving, still learning to walk, and discovered he was more valuable as an asset than as a son. He built the empire higher. The business grew, his personal life flatlined, and every birthday since passed in silence, until tonight, until a soaked maid and her daughter reminded him what he'd forgotten, that wealth means nothing if you've lost your humanity. He didn't know it yet, but that simple encounter would dismantle everything he thought he understood about success, purpose, and what it actually means to live. Jonathan's office occupied the 47th floor of Pierce Tower, a glass and steel monument to ambition that dominated the Chicago skyline. 3 curved monitors displayed real-time data from 6 continents, shipping routes pulsing like arterial systems, stock tickers scrolling in perpetual motion, video feeds from distribution centers in Shanghai, Rotterdam, and São Paulo. His assistant Harry stood beside the mahogany desk, tablet in hand, reciting the morning briefing with mechanical efficiency. The Singapore merger closes Friday. Legal needs your signature on the compliance addendum. The board convenes Thursday to review Q3 projections. Henderson expects 16% growth, or he's pushing for operational restructuring. Your father called twice. He wants, "Tell him I'll call back." Jonathan's eyes remained fixed on the screens, but he wasn't seeing shipping manifests or profit margins. He was seeing a little girl singing off-key in an empty restaurant. Harry continued. The automotive logistics acquisition in Detroit needs final approval, and the quarterly workforce optimization report is ready for review. Workforce optimization. The corporate euphemism tasted like ash. Send it over. Harry hesitated. Sir, it's fairly routine. Mostly lower-tier positions across hospitality and facility management. Your father already approved the general framework. I said send it. Harry nodded and retreated. Moments later, the 63-page document materialized on Jonathan's center screen. He scrolled past executive summaries and efficiency metrics until he reached the appendices. Section 7, Recommended Terminations, Hospitality Division. The Grandview Hotel appeared on page 41. 17 names. Housekeeping staff, maintenance workers, night porters. People whose salaries barely registered as rounding errors in Pierce Industries' quarterly reports. 15th on the list, Maria Esperanza Reyes. Position, housekeeping. Tenure, 2.3 years. Performance rating, satisfactory. Reason for termination, operational efficiency measures. Jonathan's hand stopped moving the mouse. Satisfactory. She showed up, did her job, raised a daughter alone while studying for exams she couldn't afford, and she was satisfactory enough to discard for a negligible increase in profit margins his father would never notice. He closed the document and stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Somewhere down there, Maria was probably cleaning rooms right now. Anna was probably in school, drawing pictures or asking questions teachers found delightful. And neither of them knew that in 72 hours, Maria would receive a termination notice that would unravel everything she'd fought to build. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. Board meeting prep. My office. 6 p.m. Don't be late. Jonathan didn't respond. He discovered the rest over 3 days of quiet investigation that would have horrified his former self for wasting time on irrelevancies. Maria's teaching license application. Rejected for the 3rd consecutive year. Not because of qualifications. Her Guatemalan credentials were impeccable. Not because of language barriers. Her English had improved dramatically. But because Illinois required a $4,000 certification course she couldn't afford while supporting Anna on $19 an hour. She'd saved $2,000 over 18 months. Then Anna got sick. Emergency room visit, antibiotics, the savings evaporated. So Maria kept cleaning toilets in hotels where guests spent more on room service than she earned in a week. Jonathan found the detail that broke something inside him buried in his assistant's background report. Last Tuesday, Anna had asked her mother a question that a hotel supervisor overheard and mentioned casually to building management. "Mommy, do birthdays always look that lonely? Like that man's did?" Maria had answered quietly, "Some people have everything except what matters, mi amor." The supervisor thought it was amusing, included it in a staff anecdote email that circulated through management. Jonathan read it 3 times. He'd acquired a robotics company this quarter for $200 million. He'd automated shipping protocols across 3 continents, eliminating inefficiencies that saved Pierce Industries $40 million annually. He'd negotiated a partnership with a Japanese conglomerate that financial analysts called Visionary, but he'd never once improved the life of a single human being standing directly in front of him. Not Maria, not the night porter who greeted him every evening. Not the maintenance worker who ensured his private elevator functioned flawlessly. He'd optimized systems, maximized profits, dominated markets, and he'd never seen people. Jonathan buzzed his assistant. "Harry, the workforce optimization report." "Yes, sir." "Pause all hospitality division terminations pending my review." Silence. Then, "Sir, your father already approved." "I'm aware. Pause them. The board will ask questions." "Let them ask." Jonathan's voice hardened. "And remove Maria Reyes from any termination consideration permanently." "Understood. Anything else?" "Research pathways for foreign teaching credential certification in Illinois. Costs, requirements, timelines. I want a full report by tomorrow morning." Harry hesitated. "May I ask why?" "No." The board meeting Thursday afternoon went exactly as Jonathan expected. Henderson, his father's closest ally, leaned back in his leather chair with barely concealed irritation. "We're questioning workforce optimization decisions now? Over housekeeping positions?" "I'm questioning whether we've actually optimized anything," Jonathan replied evenly, "or just made spreadsheets look better while damaging people who make this company function. Sentimentality doesn't drive shareholder value." Henderson's tone dripped condescension. "Neither does reputation damage when media discovers we're terminating single mothers while posting record profits." It was a tactical argument, not an emotional one. Jonathan still couldn't articulate the real reason. That a little girl's off-key singing had cracked open something he'd sealed shut for 3 years. His father sat at the head of the table saying nothing, watching, evaluating. The pause stretched. Finally, Warren Pierce spoke. "Table the hospitality terminations for 30 days. Jonathan will present revised recommendations." It wasn't approval. It was a test. Jonathan nodded once. Friday morning, he left his office early, unusual enough that Harry actually looked concerned. Jonathan took the private elevator down, then switched to the public one at the lobby level. The Grandview Hotel connected to Pierce Tower through an underground concourse. Jonathan had walked it 10,000 times without noticing the people who kept it immaculate. Today, he noticed. The porter who nodded respectfully. The window washer on a scaffolding outside. The maintenance worker replacing a burned-out light fixture. And Maria, pushing a housekeeping cart toward the service elevator, hair tied back, uniform crisp despite the early hour. She didn't see him at first. Jonathan stopped walking. For 3 years, he'd passed people like ghosts, present but invisible, functional but irrelevant. He'd told himself it was professionalism, efficiency, appropriate boundaries between a billionaire and those who served his empire. But it was just cowardice. Fear that seeing people meant feeling something. And feeling meant remembering he was human, not just an asset his father could deploy. Maria glanced up. Recognition flickered across her face, followed immediately by nervous deference. She started to lower her eyes. "Hello, Maria," Jonathan said. She froze, clearly uncertain if she'd heard correctly. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce." Her voice carried the careful neutrality of someone accustomed to being invisible. "How is Anna?" Maria's eyes widened. She's well. Thank you for asking." The conversation lasted 30 seconds, polite, unremarkable. But when Jonathan walked away, something fundamental had shifted. He'd stopped. He'd seen someone. And for the first time since the accident stole everything he thought mattered, Jonathan Pierce wondered if maybe, just maybe, he could learn to be human again. The boardroom on the 52nd floor had witnessed billions in deals, strategic pivots that reshaped industries, decisions that moved markets. Today, it felt like a courtroom, and Jonathan was on trial. Henderson slammed the quarterly report onto the polished table. "We're 3 weeks behind schedule on the hospitality restructuring because you've decided to play social worker. Explain." 12 faces turned toward Jonathan, some curious, most disapproving. His father sat at the head of the table, expression carved from granite, saying nothing. "I'm conducting a comprehensive review," Jonathan said evenly, "ensuring we're not creating long-term brand liability for short-term savings." Brand liability? Henderson's laugh was sharp. "We're talking about housekeeping staff, positions we can fill in 48 hours. You're holding up efficiency measures that would save us $2.3 million annually because, what? You suddenly care about maids?" The contempt in that final word made Jonathan's jaw tighten. "I care about making decisions based on complete data rather than spreadsheet reductionism. This is sentimentality." Another board member, Richardson, old money and older prejudices, leaned forward. "Your father built this company on hard choices, profitable choices, not feelings." "My father," Jonathan said quietly, "built this company when corporate reputation wasn't a viral news cycle away from collapse. Times change." Warren Pierce finally spoke. "Are they changing? Or are you?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Jonathan met his father's gaze. "Maybe both." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Henderson seized the moment. "With respect, Jonathan, we're questioning your focus. The Detroit acquisition needs attention. The Tokyo partnership requires oversight. Instead, you're spending time at the Grandview Hotel interviewing housekeeping staff about working conditions. It's beneath your position." "Nothing about understanding this company is beneath my position." "Then understand this." Henderson's voice hardened. "Compassion is a luxury corporations can't afford. It's a liability that weakens decision-making and sets dangerous precedents. You start making exceptions for one employee. Suddenly, everyone expects special treatment. That's not leadership. That's chaos." Jonathan's father said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. The meeting adjourned without resolution, which meant Jonathan had lost ground. He started spending mornings at the Grandview before heading to the office. Officially, he was conducting operational assessments. Actually, he was learning how the other half of his empire functioned. The housekeeping staff started their shifts at 6 a.m. They cleaned an average of 16 rooms per day, each to exacting standards, with 15-minute breaks that barely allowed time to use the restroom. Many worked split shifts, morning cleaning, evening turn-down service, with unpaid hours in between because full-time employment meant the hotel owed benefits. Maria worked both shifts 4 days a week. Jonathan watched her move through the halls with practiced efficiency, replacing linens, scrubbing bathrooms, restocking amenities. She smiled politely at guests who didn't acknowledge her existence. She never complained, never slowed. At 3 p.m., during her unpaid break, she sat in the staff room with a stack of textbooks and teacher certification study guides. Jonathan observed from the doorway she didn't notice. Within 20 minutes, exhaustion won. Maria's head lowered onto her folded arms, textbook still open beneath her, highlighter rolling from her relaxed fingers. She'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. Something cracked inside Jonathan's chest. She was him, years ago, working himself to collapse, chasing one chance at success. Except he'd had every advantage: elite education, family wealth, a safety net that would catch him if he fell. Maria had none of that. Just determination and a daughter who believed birthdays shouldn't look lonely. He waited until she woke, startled, embarrassed, checking her phone to ensure she hadn't missed her next shift. "Mr. Pierce." She stood quickly, nearly knocking over her coffee. "I didn't see you." "Sit, please." Jonathan gestured to the chair across from her. She hesitated, then obeyed with visible discomfort. Bosses didn't sit with housekeepers. Billionaires didn't take breaks in staff rooms. "You're studying for Illinois teaching certification," Jonathan said. "Yes, sir. I wasn't sleeping on company time, I promise." "I'm not here to reprimand you." He paused. "How long have you been trying?" Maria's shoulders sagged slightly. 3 years. The exam itself I could pass, but Illinois requires a $4,000 professional development course first. I keep saving, but—" She gestured helplessly. "Life happens." "You ran a classroom in Guatemala." Surprise flickered across her face. "How did you know?" "I looked into your background." He saw her tense and added quickly, "Not to investigate you, to understand what you've already accomplished." She studied him warily, uncertain what this conversation was becoming. "You're not asking for handouts," Jonathan continued. "You're working 2 jobs while raising a daughter alone and studying for credentials you've already earned once. That's not dependency, that's heroic." Maria's eyes glistened. "It doesn't feel heroic. It feels like drowning slowly." The words hit Jonathan like a physical blow, because he knew exactly what she meant. "I want to sponsor your certification," he said. Maria froze. What? The course fees, the exam costs, I'll cover them. And I want to transfer you to an administrative training position while you study. Better hours, better pay. You keep working, but with time to actually prepare." She stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Then she shook her head. "Mr. Pierce, I can't accept charity." "It's not charity." His voice was firm. "It's an investment. You're qualified. You're capable. The only barrier between you and success is an arbitrary financial obstacle. Removing that isn't charity. It's justice." "People will say—" She stopped, dropping her gaze. "People will assume things." Jonathan understood immediately. The rumors, the implications. A billionaire helping a young woman. What would people think? "Let them assume," he said quietly. "I know the truth. You know the truth. Anna knows the truth. That's what matters." Maria's hands trembled. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because your daughter sang to me when no one else remembered I existed. Because you reminded me that success without humanity is just expensive emptiness. Because I've spent 3 years being a machine, and I'm trying to remember how to be a person." But he said simply, "Because it's right." His father appeared in Jonathan's office that evening without knocking. Never a good sign. Warren Pierce was 71, silver-haired, steel-spined, a man who'd built an empire through calculated ruthlessness. He looked at his son with the same analytical coldness he applied to quarterly earnings reports. "You're making a mistake," Warren said without preamble. "Which one?" Jonathan didn't look up from his laptop. "This Maid, this teaching certification, this performance of caring." Warren's voice dripped contempt. "You're not paid to fix stray lives. You're paid to run an empire." Jonathan finally met his father's eyes. "An empire of what? Quarterly profits and human suffering? Don't be naive. Business requires hard choices. If you start making exceptions, treating employees like charity cases—" "She's not a charity case," Jonathan stood. "She's a qualified teacher who can't afford bureaucratic fees. Helping her isn't weakness. It's recognizing wasted potential. It's sentimentality." Warren stepped closer. "The same weakness that made you fall apart after the accident. The same softness that cost you Victoria." "Victoria left because she couldn't handle inconvenience," Jonathan said coldly. "Not because I was weak, because she was shallow." "And you think this Maid is different?" Warren's smile was cruel. "You think she sees you as anything but a meal ticket? Poor little billionaire, lonely on his birthday, so touched by the singing child that he—" "Stop!" Jonathan's voice cut like a blade. Warren Pierce didn't stop. "You're confusing gratitude for genuine connection. She's not your friend. She's an employee who knows exactly what gratitude is worth in dollars. This compassion you're performing, it's embarrassing." Jonathan felt rage building, 3 years of suppressed fury at a father who viewed love as liability and kindness as corporate weakness. "What empire matters?" Jonathan said slowly. "If it forgets the people who build it, the one that survives." Warren's expression hardened. Empires aren't built on feelings. They're built on strength. And right now, you're showing the board exactly how weak you've become. The words hung between them like a thrown gauntlet. "Get out of my office," Jonathan said quietly. Warren Pierce smiled, a victor's smile. "You'll learn, eventually. That compassion is a luxury men like us can't afford." He left without another word. Jonathan stood alone in his office, hands shaking, heart pounding. He'd just chosen Maria's future over his father's approval, and he knew, with absolute certainty, the war had officially begun. The emergency board meeting convened on a Tuesday morning with the energy of an execution. Word had spread through Pierce Industries' executive levels that Jonathan was proposing something unprecedented and potentially catastrophic to the company's carefully maintained profit margins. Henderson arrived early, armed with spreadsheets. Richardson brought legal counsel. Jonathan's father sat at the head of the table like a judge awaiting a guilty verdict. Jonathan stood at the presentation screen, surprisingly calm despite knowing his entire future hinged on the next hour. "I'm proposing the Pierce Pathways Initiative," he began, pulling up the first slide. "A company-wide program supporting education and upward mobility for employees across all divisions." Immediate murmurs rippled through the room. The program would provide certification sponsorships, tuition assistance, and paid training transitions for employees demonstrating potential beyond their current positions. Initial budget, $15 million annually. Henderson's laugh was sharp and immediate. $15 million to what? Send janitors to college? To invest in human capital we're currently wasting, Jonathan replied evenly. We hire people for entry-level positions and assume they'll stay there forever. We never ask what they're capable of becoming. Because that's not our job, Richardson interjected. We hire for specific roles. If people want advancement, they pursue it themselves. With what time? Jonathan clicked to the next slide, data he'd gathered over 3 weeks. Our housekeeping staff averages 54 hours weekly between split shifts. Kitchen workers pull 60-hour weeks during peak seasons. When exactly are they supposed to pursue education? Between their second job and sleeping? That's not our responsibility. It's exactly our responsibility if we're creating systems that trap capable people in positions beneath their potential. Jonathan's voice remained controlled, but intensity leaked through. We talk constantly about innovation and competitive advantage, but we ignore the most obvious source, our own workforce. His father finally spoke. This is sentimentality disguised as strategy. No. Jonathan met Warren's eyes directly. This is strategy you're too proud to recognize. Corporate reputation matters now more than ever. Employee retention saves money. Internal promotion costs less than external recruitment. And companies that invest in workers generate measurable loyalty that translates to productivity. He clicked to a new slide. Case studies from companies that had implemented similar programs. Costco, Starbucks, certain tech firms that had seen retention increase and training costs decrease. But beyond metrics, Jonathan continued, voice quieting, there's a simple truth we've forgotten. The next great mind might be holding a mop right now because nobody gave them a door to walk through. Silence fell over the room. Henderson recovered first. This is naive. You're asking us to become a charity. I'm asking us to stop being blind. Jonathan's composure cracked slightly, passion bleeding through. We celebrate innovation. We claim to value talent. But we've structured a company where someone brilliant and hard-working can spend years invisible because they started in the wrong position. That's not excellence. That's waste. The cost, Richardson began. $15 million, Jonathan interrupted, is 0.3% of our annual revenue. We spend more on executive retreats. We spend more on office renovations. We're not talking about financial risk. We're talking about priority. His father leaned back, studying Jonathan like a chess opponent whose strategy had suddenly become unpredictable. "You're making this personal," Warren said quietly. "This isn't about company growth. This is about one maid who sang to you at a birthday party." The room went absolutely still. Jonathan could have denied it, could have pivoted to pure business justification. Instead, he met his father's challenge head-on. "Yes," he said simply. "It started there, with Maria, with her daughter Anna, with realizing I'd spent 3 years optimizing systems while completely ignoring the humans inside them. And if that makes this personal, good. Because maybe we need more personal and less abstract when we make decisions that shape people's lives." Henderson seized the opening. "This is exactly the problem. Emotion clouding judgment. Making policy based on feelings rather than what?" Jonathan's voice rose. "Rather than spreadsheets that reduce human beings to line items? Rather than efficiency models that measure everything except whether we're actually improving lives? You want to talk about clouded judgment? We just spent 40 minutes debating whether $15 million, money we won't even notice, is worth helping people who've worked for this company for years finally achieve what they're capable of." He paused, looking around the table at faces that ranged from hostile to uncertain. "If that's controversial," Jonathan said quietly, "then maybe we've lost sight of what we're actually building here." The vote was called 15 minutes later. 7 in favor, 5 opposed. The Pierce Pathways initiative passed, barely. Jonathan's father voted against it. Warren Pierce cornered Jonathan in his office that evening, closing the door with controlled fury. "You made me look weak in there," Warren said, voice cold as January. "Undermined my authority, forced me into a position where I had to choose between supporting foolishness or appearing heartless." "You made that choice yourself," Jonathan replied, not looking up from his laptop. "This compassion you're performing, it's going to destroy you." Warren stepped closer. "You think you're being noble? You're being manipulated. That woman saw opportunity, and her daughter played the perfect innocent—" "Stop." Jonathan's hands stilled on the keyboard. "You're too weak to see it," Warren continued, each word a practiced cut. "The accident broke something in you, made you soft, made you need validation from people who— The accident didn't break me." Jonathan stood, finally meeting his father's eyes with something that had been building for 3 years. "You did." Warren froze. "I nearly died," Jonathan continued, voice shaking with suppressed rage. "I spent months learning to walk again. I lost someone I thought I loved, and your response was to tell me to get back to work, because the company needed me functional. Not, 'How are you?' Not, 'What do you need?' Just, 'Don't let this affect the stock price.' I was teaching you strength. You were teaching me that I only mattered as an asset." Jonathan's voice cracked. "That love was conditional on productivity, that showing pain was weakness, that being human was a liability. In business it is. Then I don't want your version of business." The words exploded out. "If the price of your approval is becoming someone cruel, someone who measures human worth in quarterly returns, someone who looks at a single mother working herself to death and sees only a budget optimization opportunity, then I don't want it." Warren Pierce stared at his son like he was looking at a stranger. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," Warren said quietly. "No," Jonathan replied. "The biggest mistake was spending 34 years trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it." His father left without another word. Jonathan stood alone in his office, hands trembling, feeling simultaneously shattered and whole. He just severed a lifelong chain, and for the first time, he could breathe. Maria's certification exam results arrived on a Friday afternoon. She passed with a 92% score. By Monday, she'd been transferred to an education coordinator position within the Pierce Hospitality Division, designing training programs, developing career pathways, working with immigrant employees on language skills and professional development. Her first initiative, a tutoring program for employees' children, taught by staff members with teaching backgrounds who'd been working housekeeping jobs because they couldn't afford U.S. certification. Jonathan attended the program launch quietly, standing in the back of the hotel conference room while 15 children, including Anna, participated in the first session. Anna spotted him and waved enthusiastically. Maria saw him and smiled, genuine, grateful, but also proud. This wasn't charity she'd received. It was opportunity she'd earned. "See?" Anna whispered loudly, tugging her mother's sleeve. The wish worked. For the first time in 3 years, Jonathan smiled. Not the practiced executive smile for cameras, but something genuine that reached his eyes. The wish had worked, just not the way he'd expected. Over the following months, Jonathan implemented reforms that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. He hired labor equity consultants to audit working conditions across Pierce Industries. He instituted minimum wage increases for lower-tier positions. He began quarterly meetings with employees from every division, not through management filters, but direct conversations about conditions, concerns, and ideas. He discovered maintenance workers with engineering degrees, kitchen staff with business training, security guards with military leadership experience. Talent had been everywhere. He'd just never bothered to look. The board grumbled about costs. His father stopped speaking to him entirely, but employee retention increased. Productivity rose. And when a business journal ran a feature on the Pierce Pathways initiative, applications to work for Pierce Industries tripled. Turns out people wanted to work for companies that saw them as human. Jonathan didn't claim credit publicly. He let Maria's story lead, the single mother who went from housekeeping to education coordinator, who built programs that changed lives. Because he'd finally learned. The world didn't change through billion-dollar acquisitions first. It changed through people, one person, one opportunity, one moment of choosing compassion over convenience. On Jonathan's 35th birthday, the private dining room at the Grandview Hotel looked different. The table wasn't set for 6 with one occupant. It was set for 8, and every seat was full. Anna sat to his right, telling an elaborate story about her school science project. Maria sat beside her daughter, relaxed in a way Jonathan had never seen before. Not tense, not exhausted, just present. 3 other program participants from Pierce Pathways filled the remaining seats, sharing laughter and stories about their children, their studies, their dreams that were finally becoming possible. No cameras, no board members, no wealth on display, just people who'd taught Jonathan what actually mattered. Anna produced a cupcake, homemade this time, frosting slightly lopsided, candles standing crooked, but proud. "Make a wish," she announced with all the ceremony of a child who believed wishes were serious business. Jonathan looked around the table at faces that hadn't been in his life a year ago. At the little girl who'd sung when no one else remembered him. At the woman who'd taught him that strength looked like perseverance, not power. He'd spent 34 years wishing for things: success, approval, love, validation. Tonight, for the first time in his adult life, Jonathan Pierce did not wish for something when the candle was lit. He simply gave thanks.
Now that's the end of Jonathan's story today. If it hit differently, smash that subscribe button and share this with someone fighting their own battles. We read every comment. Tell us which moment broke your heart or put it back together. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.